movie, music, news, television promos, trailers, and videos used by Oscar Mike Radio are protected by the Fair Use Act. Section 107 of the Copyright Act. 1. The purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes. 2. The nature of the copyrighted work. 3. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. 4. The effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis, Marine Corps veteran and your host. Oscar Mike Radio is part of Sinister Ones Productions. What's your podcast doing? I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asack of Asack Real Estate, Echo 6 Ranch Designs, thank you very much, and my supporters, Cason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Fight Camp. Be your strongest combination. We're counting down to 500. It's a really fast time and just an exciting time as things change every week. I have a great guest. We actually have a lot in common, even though he's Army and I'm Marine Corps. I want to welcome my next guest, Joseph Yurrick, Army veteran, host of the Sober Vet podcast, to Oscar Mike Radio. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Travis. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very interested in your story and your current outreach and your military story. And let's start there. You know, we're kind of similar in a way, kind of cousins, if you will.
ADA represent.
Yeah. So tell us about your Army time and how that all worked out.
Okay. So my senior year, I was a class of 2000. I literally had no direction. I was a class clown. I viewed every classroom as my audience. I had my own desk in the in-school suspension room. I was on academic probation for my senior prom. I had to sign a document before walking the stage of graduation. Like I was that level class clown. And halfway through my senior year, my best friend came up to me and was like, dude, what are we doing when we graduate? And I was like, oh, I was only worried about today. And he was like, I was talking to Army recruiter. We could join in something called the buddy program and the delayed entry program. So we could sign up now, but not leave until after we graduate. So I was like, all right, dude, I got your back. Let's do it. So we signed up in December of our senior year in the delayed entry program. Weren't set to leave till like August 17th after we graduated. Well, 2 weeks before we go to leave, my buddy calls and says, dude, I'm not going. I'm like, what? What do you mean you're not going? Like, this was your idea. And yeah, he got a lawyer, he backed out, and for whatever reason, he didn't go in. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing this solo. So I did basic at Fort Sill, Lawton, Oklahoma, and then I did my AIT at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. And that's where I learned to work with the Patriot missile system in the air defense artillery. And that's where you and I are common because you were with the Hawk just before the Patriot, right?
Yeah,
Nice.
it is really interesting. They had Patriot batteries there when I was in right before you, 95 and 99. So Patriot
Okay.
was really rolling online. But if you're in air defense, you go to Fort Bliss.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And to meet another air defender is super rare. I
Yeah.
consider us the redheaded stepchild of the Army. So it's an honor to meet another air defender.
So
Right.
let's talk about that for a second because people don't believe me. I'm like, in the Marine Corps, we weren't liked by Air Wing or infantry. Nobody liked us for a lot of reasons, Joe. The first is we weren't, the grunts didn't consider us hard enough to be infantry. And the
Mhm.
air wingers thought that we were crazy. Plus, we practiced shooting their guys down. So we had a problem there. And then
Right.
I was told one time, straight to my face, that this staff NC always thought that air defenders were too chicken to be in the front lines or with, a forward unit. And I'm like, well, you look at Ukraine now, without us, air defense, it would have
Mhm.
been a very different story. We served a function. And I was going to ask you, did you ever hear the story? They brought in some Kuwaiti hawkers, or I think they were Kuwaitis, and they told us what Saddam Hussein did to the Hawk batteries when he rolled into Kuwait.
I have
When he
not heard
started,
this.
well, they brought in a group of Kuwaiti air defenders, and they told us that he sent everything he had at where they knew the batteries were to run them out of missiles. And when they ran
Mhm.
them out of missiles, the Republican Guard came through and cut their heads off because they had exacted a toll. So
Wow.
I just never really subscribed to the notion that we're just in the rear with the gear doing nothing. Like there's, yeah, your enemy's 500 yards away. Our enemy is, 20, 40, 60 miles away, and we got seconds to react,
Hmm.
right? Isn't that what you were taught?
Absolutely, yeah. And if for some reason if the missile didn't connect, then that missile could have taken out our whole AO. So I mean, there's always a fear when you have that Scud launch, and you're putting a lot of faith in that 18-foot long missile.
And what's that like? Now, people don't believe me. What's that like being behind the scope and you're trying to track that Scud or that aircraft down, Joe?
So that would be a 14 Echo. I was actually a 14 Tango. So I was a launcher dog. So I was part of the crew that made sure we in place set up the launchers and that they were ready to go. I actually didn't work in the engagement control center. Those are
Okay,
the guys that were looking at the radar. But I can tell you this. Um, Whenever we did have one go off, is this a censored
kind of,
um,
yeah.
Okay. So I liken it to when a Patriot missile goes off and you're within 100 yards of it. Talk about a freedom boner because you can feel that missile reverberate through your whole body. And it is just like the coolest thing to watch it just take off and then whatever direction it's going in. And yeah, it's very cool. It's very powerful, very long range. And I mean, I would say they're pretty accurate for the most part.
Well, that's the thing, right? People are like, I was supply or motor T or I was a 240 gunner. And I'm like, well, I'm a hawker. We fired a missile as long as your car at a target. And
Right.
to your point, man, there was nothing like seeing the hot missile take off.
Hmm.
You heard the boom, which means that it had broken the sound barrier, and you realize that you put that thing together.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome.
That's amazing. Absolutely.
In the Hawk battery, you were taught how to use the radars, and we got van time. But everybody started off in launchers, and then you got moved to the acquisition radar, then the tracking radar, and then the van. But they would
Oh,
roll
wow.
you in and out. On a field op, they would have you come in and do, scope time so you would at least get your skills worked up and stay with it. And if we got a kill on a friendly, simulated course, the lieutenant was pretty happy. But it's a very different MOS, a very different crew that does it, right?
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And again, with Patriot, there's people that specifically just work with the launchers, make sure they're up and running. And then there's people in the ECS. And I don't know if you had it, we had a big four. We had the engagement control system, the antenna mast group, the generator truck, the EMG, and then there was the actual radar. So there was an MOS specific to each of those big four, and then we were in charge of everything downrange, just making sure the launchers were hooked up right,
Wow.
running, and capable. Yep.
No, it's so in LAM, Light Anti-Aircraft Missile Battalion, you got to do it all. You might not be working on everything at the same time, but you were taught, launchers, the acquisition radar, the tracking radar, and the van. But when we went out
Interesting.
into the field, you might be assigned to the acquisition radar, and that's all you worked on during that time. But you knew how to in place and march order a launcher system, drive the loader. And that's the other thing. You guys drove trucks with the missiles already on them.
Yes, we did. Yeah, and they were super long because first we were driving the HEMIT, which everything in the Army is an acronym. It was a heavy expanded mobility tactical truck, and then the launcher itself was probably like a little longer than like an 18 wheelers. So yeah, doing the driver's training for that was definitely fun, and driving that in country was definitely interesting. But yeah, that was pretty cool to be able to drive them around.
What was the night drives like?
Pretty wild because we would be in the blackouts, and so you would only have like the little marker lights on. And yeah, those were definitely interesting because your co-pilot is trying to read the map and like telling you where to go because all you see is sand and sand berms. Like you have no idea where you are. And yeah, there's
You
definitely
can
some
get
interesting
lost
times there.
easy, man. You can get
Way
lost.
easily. Absolutely.
People
Yep.
don't believe me.
Nah. But what was that? There was a GPS thing. It was like the size of a brick and it had an antenna that flipped up. I forget what that was called, but one of my NCOs taught me how to read that to a T so I can grid mark exactly where we were on the map while using that. So if we were lost, we would just pull over, get our coordinates on there, and I knew exactly how we could get back.
They didn't have them out when I was in. They were just putting those in the Marine Corps. I know what you're talking about, though. It's not like a GPS, but it's like a huge walkie-talkie.
Right.
Not like a it would fit in like a camelback, and
Hmm.
they would take it out and get you your 10-digit grid coordinate,
Right, exactly. Yep.
right there
Yep.
and then align it to the map. It was crazy. I guess lieutenants don't get lost anymore. I don't know. Um, but you do this MOS, and you got to admit, I mean, when you get out, like not everybody in the Army, nobody in the military knows what you do. What was that like?
That was interesting because when it comes to that civilian transformation, the only thing that really coincided with what we did was a truck driver because we drove these big vehicles, and that was it. Because there was no real missiles in the civilian world, and when you tell people about air defense artillery, like you don't know how they're going to take it. They're like, "What does that mean?" Like you blow stuff up. Like there's just so many variables of what it is. And again, I liken it's such a small part of the army that people are like, "Army? I figured that'd be Air Force or something else." Like people just don't know how to take it when you say air defense artillery. And then sometimes when you say Patriot missile, they're like, "Oh, I remember seeing that on the news," and other people don't know what it means. And actually, that's an acronym too. That was phased array tracking radar intercept on target. Now, the fact that I remember these acronyms, dude, I got out in '04.
You never
So
forget.
yeah, nah, nah, it's like riding a bike. It just stays with you.
Like Hawk stands for homing all the way killer. The QAR is continuous wave acquisition and radar. It's
There you
amazing. I
go.
forget what I had for breakfast 2 weeks ago, but I can
Right, right.
remember every one of these things. It's crazy. And
I have
that's
a quick question for you.
yeah.
Do you remember what a OE254 is?
No, I don't.
Did you work with them? So they were these antennas that had like these 10 poles, and then up top they had these like X wires with these little balls on the end. And that was one thing we were playing bingo, and someone was like, said something similar. I was like, that reminds me of the OE254. Like it's just random military lingo that pops in my brain just at the weirdest times.
And just last thing, I mean, you all had to drive generator trucks out there too.
Yep.
We always thought the vehicles had generators on them just to solve power. So you had Jenny's,
So there is a generator on the launcher itself, but
yeah,
with the big four up top, there was a truck specifically with like four generators on
yes.
it, and that ran the radar, the ECS, and the antenna match group. And then we had a fueler who was on like 24/7, and at like every 6 hours or whatever, he would fill everything up. It was his rotation, and yeah, he was cool.
I mean, I don't know how he did it in the Army, but they didn't really mess with the generator guys that much for our battery. They had the PT and all that stuff, but they didn't get to do all the crazy stuff because when we when we got to our position, the lieutenant wanted power like now.
Yes, yeah, they're super important. But I mean, where I was, we were all treated the same. We were all in the same battalion. We all did the same. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were run days. Tuesdays, Thursdays were muscle failure. Like, yeah, we all pretty much did the same, and that's why we became such a family. And to kind of transition into the alcohol thing is,
Yeah, yeah.
um, where I was stationed at Fort Bliss, back when I was in, the drinking age on post was only 18 because we literally were miles away from Juarez, Mexico, where you only had to be 18 to drink. Now, granted, on the weekends in between pay periods, me and my boys, we would still go to Juarez. We called it J Town because it was super cheap down there. You pay a quarter to cross the Rio Grande, and then we would go to a bar called the Tequila Derby. It was $10 to get in, drink and drown. So if you show up at 8 p.m. on $10, you're drinking till 2 a.m. till they kick you out. So like, yeah, we would have fun out there. So I say that to say this: the Air Defense Artillery, the ADA, we dubbed ourselves alcoholics defending America because of the alcohol consumption we did and keeping in tradition with the ADA. Because again, we could go down to the class six as an 18-year-old and buy two 40s and a bottle of liquor and no one looked twice.
So wait a minute, because when I was there at Fort Bliss, there's a lot of things going on, but the Marine Corps banned us from going to Juarez, and it was our understanding the Army didn't want their soldiers going down there either, but not that,
Correct.
but you all did anyway. But because it was
Yes.
dangerous, we were told don't go to Juarez.
Dude, it was super dangerous. And now that I look back on it, we were so young and dumb. Because like, if you watch a movie like Sicario, it was around that time, and there was so much drug wars and stuff. But now, granted, we would go down at least 8 to 10 deep, like we knew it was dangerous. But one thing that was pretty wild is like, number one, we stuck out like a sore thumb, because we were a mix. When I was in, I was like white people were kind of minority, so there was white, black, Hispanic, Asian. So we would always go down with a mix of people, but at least those white guys, you could see the high and tight, you could see the tan line. Like we just stood out like a sore thumb. So at the end of the night, 2 a.m., when we're walking back stateside, there would be these local cops walking from the bridge into Juarez, and they would look for groups like us, and they literally would just grab one of us and just keep walking that way. And we would be like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And they'd be like, dinero, dinero. And we're like, at the end of the night, we're broke. So we're like, bringing out ones, and they're like, no, no, they're like, what kind of watch is that? And there's one night my buddy was wearing a Movado, which was like $1,000 watch. And this cop was like, that's a nice watch. And he's like, no, no. And he's like, you want your buddy? And we're like, took his watch off, gave it to him. And the thing is, we couldn't come back and tell our NCOs because we weren't allowed to be in there anyway. So yeah, it was crazy.
Man, I tell you, I mean, in Yuma, so I got stationed in Yuma after Fort Bliss, and I mean, the federales were no joke. Like people complain
Right.
about American cops. I'm like, you don't know what scared is until a federale pulls up to you and says just what you just said. And you
Right.
realize he knows that you didn't tell your NCOs where you were. He can throw you in jail
Absolutely.
right now.
Right. And good luck getting out of that. Like, ooh, that's scary as hell.
Yeah, yeah. So and it's funny, a lot of your outreach now and your transition story now involves alcohol. Was the military where it really set in that you really liked drinking? Because I had some Marines that on the weekend they'd go get 2 30 packs, and between Friday night to Sunday afternoon they would go through 2 30 packs no problem. And later they started having issues. Is this where it started becoming part of your life?
It was 100% part of
Yeah.
our fabric. Like the parties we would have in the barracks were crazy. Like on any given Tuesday, we would walk down to the class six. You could buy my favorite 40 at the time was called King Cobra because they had the wide mounts and they were only $1.25 each. So you go down, you get 2 or 4 King Cobras. We would come back to the barracks, have our buddy duct tape them to each hand. It was called Edward 40 hands, and we would just drink as fast as you can because once you start drinking, you're getting ready to break the seal. Like you can't unzip your pants until you're done at least one of them, and then you would smash it, pull your hand off the duct tape, and then like go relieve yourself. But yeah, like that was just on a Tuesday. On the weekends, it got to the point where we would get drunk twice in a day because our weekends were so short. We would wake up early on a Saturday morning, start boozing, be drunk by like 12, 1 o'clock, pass out, wake up around 6 or 7 o'clock, get dressed for the club, go out clubbing in El Paso, and then get drunk all over again. And again, back then we were like alcohol is defending America. Like we made a joke of it, but I mean, it was the part of a huge problem that I didn't realize at the time because when you're in it, everyone else is doing it, so it seems very normal. When I knew it was a problem is when I got out, because when I first got out, I lived with my parents for a couple months before I found an apartment. And literally the first weekend, my stepmom was like, Joe, you are drinking way too much. And I wasn't even like drinking to get drunk. I was just like what I thought casual drinking. But no, it like scared the crap out of her immediately. So of course, in my alcoholic mind, I was like, I gotta get out of here. So she's not watching me anymore. So that like motivated me to get an apartment, which is such like that was bad too, because then when I was on my own alone in an apartment, no one was there to tell me what not to drink, and it quickly got out of control because again when you're in it was normal. We would like my room was the hangout room. We would play cards, be drinking part like it was just a part of the culture. When something good happened we'd celebrate with alcohol. When something bad happened we would drink it off. And yeah, it was just embedded in us.
Well, I don't drink. It's not that I've never drank in my life. I've never gotten into that aspect of what I did. So I went in the Corps, and I watched so many guys torpedo their careers and their lives, man, because they drank, and it just kind of reinforced it for me. Or you got Lance Corporal Schmuckatelli, just had a really good whatever, to your point, celebrating, go out, have a few too many, and get popped by the cops or the MPs, and his
Mhm.
career is over, man. It just really hurt. And then, one thing that came to mind is, we buried a Marine who was a designated driver, got in a car and ran it off the road into a canal. And,
Oh,
you know,
geez.
it's just something else. But I try telling these guys that look, try to avoid that stuff because the consequences are real. It
Hmm.
sounds like though that your consequences set in after you got out. So you're getting out, you're trying to change gears, and you're drinking all the time. How did this start really affecting your life, Joe?
So I was what you would call a very high functioning alcoholic. I always made sure that my drinking didn't affect my work performance. My apartment was always clean. I was always well kept. I maintained a standard, but my drinking, like I would get as close to like going overboard as I could. But and then over time, your tolerance just gets higher. And now alcohol is part of you still drink when you're happy, drink when you're sad. I got to the point where it was like a finish line for me. So like a rough week at work, I'm like Friday I get to drink, like I always use it as a goal or something I knew like, man, if I'm having a bad day, at least tonight when I get off, I could stop by the liquor store, get some Southern Comfort. Like to me, it was always there as a band-aid, a goal. Like I used it in a very bad way. And then I actually ended up meeting my wife at a bar. And through early in our relationship, I drank. And that got to a point finally after I think we were married like 8 or 9 years or a little more than 10 years. And she was just like, Joe, you're drinking way too much. You're starting to slur your words in front of the kids. We got to put this under control. So then I agreed with her that I would limit my alcohol intake to 3 beers because now at this point, I was drinking these double IPAs, which are like 9% alcohol volume. So yeah, I would limit it to 3 beers in front of her. But what she didn't know is I would have hidden stashes of a little bottle of Southern Comfort. So even though she sees me drinking 3 beers, I'm sneaking off and doing shots. And like, that's when I knew it was out of control. Cause like, as a grown man and a head of a household, you shouldn't have to sneak around to do anything, like I just inherently knew it was bad, but the addiction in me, like, I was like, 3 beers isn't enough, like I needed to get that buzz and maintain it. It was rough. And then luckily, it got to the point where my wife was like, you know what? We've tried to fix this for too long. It's not being fixed. It's either us or the kid. It's either you're drinking or us. And I'm like, what? Like that literally scared me straight because I'm a child of divorce. And I told my wife when we got married, like, we're going to work out whatever problems we have. We're not getting a divorce. And when this woman who I pursued, I fell in love with, I had kids with, was willing to leave me because of this choice I was making to put this liquid in my body, that was the final thing that just scared me straight. And I literally quit cold turkey that day. It was the hardest thing I've ever done because, like, when I first quit drinking, my confidence was stripped. I felt like I was living in the Matrix. It was like a different world. I didn't have the armor that I turned alcohol into for me. So it literally took me about a year of being sober to start to gain my confidence back and kind of see who I was again. But now I'm a little over 3 years sober. I'm never drinking again. I couldn't be happier. Like sobriety is by far the hardest, but the greatest decision I've ever made in my life.
Well, and you go through your website and you see your backstory on your website, the Sober Vet podcast, and it kind of tells that chronology of where you came from to where you are now. I I have to ask because I have seen people deal with addiction before, whether it's alcohol or substance abuse, and they have several different ways they meet this challenge daily. What When did it start becoming a pattern that you were able to stay sober daily?
But like I said, I did it cold turkey, not by choice, by being threatened by my wife. But it took a couple months to be comfortable with not drinking daily. I highly recommend number one to get a support system because
Yeah.
nobody can do this themselves. Like it's way too hard. And another thing that helped me was just compartmentalizing things is where like if I really wanted a beer, my therapist was like, listen, just tell yourself you'll get that beer tomorrow. Just make it to your pillow tonight. That's your only goal is to make it to your pillow. And as long as you're going to bed sober, you'll have that beer tomorrow. Now, granted, tomorrow never comes, but it kind of still dangles that carrot without being like so overwhelmed by sobriety. Because another thing was when my wife and I had this like ultimatum, I told her, all right, I'll quit for 6 months and then we'll reassess. That also made it a little easier because in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm not done forever. This is a 6 months thing, and then let's kind of see what happens after 6 months. So that made it easier too, because just think of how overwhelming it would be if you're like, I can never do this the rest of my existence. Like that's a little like too much to deal with. So if you kind of bring it into manageable steps and work your way up to never drinking again, that at least for me seemed to be a little better. Luckily, I had the 100% support of my wife. She wasn't a big drinker to begin with, but she told me she was like, "Listen, I won't drink." In the beginning, I wasn't comfortable going to certain like family member functions because before I would be getting drunk with them and like I'm just not ready to be around those people yet. She respected that. Um, yeah, it's so interesting too because when I first quit, a couple things that I didn't expect happened. Number one, my emotions were just crazy because before I was just masking and pushing down.
Yeah.
Now I'm feeling and going through these emotions. And as a man, it's very uncomfortable because like now we're watching a Disney movie and my son will look over and be like, is dad crying? And I'm like bawling my eyes out. And they're like, oh my God, dad never cries. Like, what is happening? And I'm like, what's going on? Like, yeah, the emotions were just crazy, which they've calmed down since, but it's very bizarre to be able to feel everything and work your way through it instead of just to mask it, numb it, and push it down, which that was my MO before, you know?
So you've been sober for 3 years, and every day is a victory, right? That's the thing that I've seen with people who have, dealt with their addiction. They realize it's a daily victory. When did this idea start to come along that, you know what, I want to make this podcast and tell the story of my addiction? The reason I'm kind of really interested in this is I teach podcasting,
I
and
do.
and the
Okay.
and the one thing that I try to really emphasize with people is don't just create a podcast, create a podcast. Okay, you have a story, but that's not the reason. What's your purpose? And it's really interesting. And I didn't know you. I haven't really learned a whole lot about you in terms of who Joe is. I don't, like I said, we don't work together. We don't, stay in the same house, nothing like that, right? But it
Mhm.
seems like that you had a real defined purpose for the Sober Vet podcast. Where did that come from, Joe?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So when I first became sober, you realize that there is a lot of time to fill space with because before when you're drinking, that would eat up hours of your day, blah, blah, blah. So what I tried to do in the beginning was I wanted to create a weekly celebration of sobriety. So I decided to kind of punish myself in a way. Every Saturday morning when my schedule allows it, I do a ruck march. I have a rucksack. It's like 50 pounds. There's some woods near me that has like a nice 5.2 mile trail. It's like a medium trail. So I figured what would I never want to do while drinking? Well, wake up hungover on a Saturday morning and put a ruck on my back and get lost in the woods. So I figured by having this as a celebration of sobriety, it will motivate me to not drink because I would never want to do that after a night of drinking. So I started these ruck marches and generally prior to this, I would take walks in the woods. I'm a business owner. I own a junk removal company. And prior to this, I would take walks in the woods to get inspiration for business ideas, videos, just ways to advertise, thinking outside the box. So I figured now that I'm sober and I'm doing these ruck marches, I should just have all these ideas flowing and like I'm just going to be on top of the world. Like I was so excited about it. Well, literally like 8 to 10 months go by and I'm doing these ruck marches and it's just silence. It's just me, the woods, and I'm like, why is nothing like inspiring me to do something? So this one ruck march, I kind of challenged God. I was getting frustrated. I'm like, God, like here I am. I'm more than able. I'm finally sober. Why aren't you using me? Like use me as a conduit. Let me do something. Here I am. I'm able. Like send me. Like why is there like radio silence right now? And like I said, I pretty much called him out because I did need a purpose. Like I felt empty. I still wasn't 100% confident yet. I wasn't the me you see today. And like, I I screamed out to God. I'm literally talking at a high voice to him on this march. And like less than a minute later, I turned this one corner that I have probably 100 times before. And in my head, clear as day, I heard this sober vet. And I'm like, this sober vet, like, what is that? So then my gears start turning. I'm like, this sober vet, is that like a podcast? Are you telling me that you want me to share this story? And then so I like again the rest of that march, I'm like just brainstorming, like I'm on fire right now. I'm like, I've never heard the conversation of normalizing sobriety with veterans. So if I could bring that to the world, and if this podcast is the vehicle to do that, God, yes, use me in that capacity. Like this is amazing. So when I get home, I'm like 100 miles a minute. I'm like, hey, hon, God talked to me. This over bad, blah blah blah. And she's like, whoa, 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 relax. Like that's a cool idea and all, but like no offense, but who are you? You're just one person that's now sober. She's like, you need someone with credentials to kind of back the mission that you're doing. And I'm like, oh, snap. I'm like, you're right. So we agreed that I should find a therapist. And I'm like, but they have to be a veteran because this is geared towards that. She's like, okay. So I thought I had a big network. Literally for like 3 months, I reached out to anyone I knew, reached out on Facebook, IG, LinkedIn, and apparently I know a million therapists and a million veterans. I didn't know one veteran therapist. So then I'm like getting down on myself. I'm praying. I'm like, God, like you gave me this amazing idea. I'm fumbling already before we're even getting our feet on the ground. Like I just need to find the perfect vet who's also a therapist. So then I'm scrolling through my phone and on IG, I see Dr. Thomas, who was, I knew as Sergeant Thomas. She was our supply sergeant when we deployed for Iraqi freedom, enduring freedom. She had posted something about evolved therapy. And I'm like, wait a minute, Sergeant T's a therapist? Now, I haven't talked to or seen Dr. T since 2004. So I messaged her on IG. I was like, hey, Dr. T is Yurrick. Can you give me a call at this number? I have something I want to run by you. So she called me right away and we kind of called up and she's like, so what's going on? And I'm like, I have this crazy idea. I told her the idea and she was like, that's actually really cool. She was like, I'm in. So I'm like, yes, I finally have my co-host. So then in November, we started and I figured how can I expect to have other veterans on and tell their sobriety story and be vulnerable without me doing it first? So I figured I had to lead by example. So episode one is my story, and the introduction of Dr. T, and then episode two and moving forward, we have other veterans come in telling their sobriety journeys, and then Dr. T and I kind of chime in when necessary. But it's really that veteran story. So like a lot of like when I told my friends I was starting a podcast, they're like, word of advice, shut up. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, so many podcasters talk the whole time. They over talk their guests. It's like, why do you even have guests on if all we hear is you? I'm like, yeah, I agree with that. So like, we literally just let our guests shine. And then we just kind of chime in like it's a conversation between friends. And it's been an amazing journey.
You're so right that that's a problem a lot of podcasters do, whether they're advanced or even beginning, is letting the guest or topic shine for you. I
Mhm.
just want to go back a little bit. You mentioned God and your faith, and I want to give glory and credit where it's due. How central is God to your daily victory over sobriety, Joe?
I'll put it like this. Every morning I wake up, the first thing I do is thank God for waking up sober
Yeah,
because that has literally saved my life. And without God and without my wife, there's no way I could have made it through sobriety because we do go to church as often as we can. I've been a believer Christian like my whole life, and I knew when it came to something as difficult as getting sober, I had to be able to lean on a power bigger than me. And yeah, I leaned on God very heavy, and he never disappoints. He's always there when he needs to be there. He knows what trials and tribulations you need to go to as long as you seek him out. And yeah, I've just been so blessed. And then again, the fact that not only did he get me through sobriety, and he helps me with that daily, but he planted this seed of this silver vet. Like it 100% was not my idea. I needed to be a conduit for his word, and he just plopped that down. And the fact that like this is why I know this is going to be successful because again, we started in November. We've released 2 episodes a month. 2 Mondays ago, we just released episode 17. I'm booked out. There's 25 episodes per season. I'm booked out till season 2, episode 6. Like that's just, it's a total
Congratulations.
blessing. Thank you. Yeah. But
Congratulations.
that tells me there's a need for what we're doing.
Well, there is a need. Again, you and I have both seen where, outside the military, alcoholism has a negative impact on people. And I'm sure, just like I did, you've seen people in the military make mistakes due to alcoholism, and it
Hmm.
just ends their whole career early. And not to mention the generational trauma and trying to raise a family with it. So it sounds like, and from what I got from your website, and then I'll have that link in the Oscar Mike Radio show post, you're doing the Lord's work, Joe. It's not an understatement.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's definitely an honor. And it's crazy too because so my producer, we film all these and record them at a place called the Candy Factory in Lancaster. Because even in the beginning, I wanted to do this the right way from the beginning. So I was like, I'm gonna have a production company do it. Like I don't want to present this to the world and it's like me with shoddy equipment and you could hear echoing and stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna do this the right way from the beginning. And it never ceases to amaze my producer. He's a civilian. But after each episode, he's like, you didn't know that guy? And I'm like, nah, I just met him like on this podcast. He's like, you guys talk like you've known each other forever. And I'm like, even though I didn't know him, we're all vets. Like we all
Yeah.
are from the same alma mater. We all wrote that check that could be cashed up to our lives. Like we have this mutual respect, and we're quick to make fun of each other, but there's still that mutual respect that we all served and we know that life. And like I just think there's an immediate trust between veterans because we've all been there, you know? So like that's a blessing in itself. Cause yeah, some of these episodes, dude, I'm just blown away by the story, blown away by this person. And I'm just blessed to be a part of it. And it actually brings me up to another thing. So if you can see our logo behind us, I have people all the time, they're like, isn't this your show? Like, why aren't you the logo? And I'm like, listen, this is not the Joe Yurrick show, or I would have called it that. This is for all sober veterans. That is just a typical soldier because addiction affects everybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're male, female, older, younger, black, white, Hispanic, whatever. Addiction affects everybody. So that is just a typical soldier that can be affected by addiction. Like, again, this is not the Joe Yurrick show. I'm doing this as a platform to bring awareness and to normalize sobriety with veterans because that is a conversation that I've never heard. So I figure I might as well be the one to bring it to the world.
What's it like when you talk to one of these veterans who've had the same but different challenges and struggles you've had, and you hear about how they've changed their life? What's that do to you as you're talking with them, Joe?
It fuels my motivation to stay sober at an astronomical level. Like it reinforces everything that I'm feeling today. And sometimes hearing these, because like no one's rock bottom is the same, and somebody's story is a rock bottom. I'm just like, wow, I'm so glad I didn't get that deep into it.
Yeah.
But there's one underlining common denominator is on this side of sobriety, dude, everyone is so happy. They don't care about telling their story because that's the old them, and they know that that story they're telling could affect someone who's listening today
Right.
who's kind
Right.
of like, I don't know if I want to give it up or not. But if they could relate to that story and they're like, holy crap, like that is me now. Like this is not good, you know? And then they could use the tools that that person used to get and remain sober. And just to be able to be a ray of light for those still in the dark and to be able to spread this mission, it really is such a blessing. And again, it motivates me to stay sober because could you imagine if like any of my guests heard like, wait, what? Joe from this sober vet fell off the wagon. Like what would that do to these people who I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to build up, you know? So I will never relapse because there's too much at stake, you know, like yeah, but to answer the question shorthand, it literally motivates me to continue my sobriety journey.
You've talked about your wife very warmly over the course of our conversation. What's the relationship like now that she's seen you, come out, get yourself sober, and then start helping other people?
So I'll tell you this, in the beginning, She honestly thought I was going to pick drinking. She was like, I didn't think you were going to pick us. Like, I was so scared to have this conversation, but enough was enough. And the fact that I did pick her, I put in the work, and she's ridden with me through this whole journey. She has completely been my rock. I didn't even think this was possible, but I'm more in love with her now than I was the day we got married because what she's done to support me through this journey, how she just has unapologetically been there for me. She doesn't hold anything I did while drinking over my head. She sees that I'm working at this. She sees that I'm sober. She sees now my relationship with my children was never bad, but it's just so much better now. And I think that's because they can trust me. I remember our conversations, and I'm just overall more present. And by her seeing a better partner in me, a better father in me, a better provider in me, and just someone that she can now trust, because when you're drinking, you lie about everything.
Right,
So
right.
now that I'm sober, I'm nothing to lie about. So she knows I'm trustworthy. If I say I'm going to be here at a certain time, I'm going to be there. I'm not going to be buzzed or drunk. I will show up. I will be present. And like I said, we're more in love now than we ever have, which I didn't even think was possible.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. What is next for the Sober Vet podcast, yourself, and where you think this whole journey is going?
So next is awareness. Right now, I'm climbing the mountain of not many people know about us, and the more people that are aware of our mission, ultimately the ripple effect. Like the more I thought about what we're doing and why we're here, is it all comes down to sobriety with the veterans and the stigma of the 22 a day or whatever the accurate number is of veteran suicides, because an alarming amount of those people, like over 90%, have some sort of substance in them when they're making this heinous decision. So if we can reach the masses, if we can normalize sobriety with veterans, a ripple effect of that should be that veteran suicide rate should go down. So that is the ultimate goal, is to get that number down. And it's just through inspiration. It's through hearing other vets that have been through it. And again, we've had male, we've had female, we've had almost every branch on so far. So like it affects all of us. So
Yeah,
we could collectively normalize sobriety with veterans, that would be huge. And even on a bigger level, like once America is tuned in and is really going with this, there could be a this sober vet Russia, a this sober vet China. It's not just us. This affects all soldiers, all warriors in other capacities. You know, I mean, this could be a global thing in order to normalize sobriety with
yeah.
any warrior anywhere. And again,
Wow.
it's such a positive message that
Oh,
I know at some point it's going to take off. Like we're still young, but when it takes off, like I can't wait because I want this to be my full-time job for me and Dr. T. I want us to release like 6 to 8 episodes a month because we're doing this full time. Like I just see a lot going on with this, but it's just the right people need to hear us and kind of push us up on that next
yeah.
level so even more can hear us. But when that does happen, I'm so ready, I'm so prepared. And trust me, my wife and my kids will definitely keep me humble. So my head won't be getting any bigger than it is right now.
Um, I just love stories like this because they are inspirational, because it is the comeback story. And there's a vein of love flowing through, a river of love flowing through the story with what your wife did for you with some tough love and then hanging in there. You don't see that a lot anymore. um as you go through this and people find you, what do you want them to get out of your podcast when they listen to it, Joe?
A few things. I want them to, number one, realize because a lot of civilians listen to our podcast and a lot of military wives listen because they're the ones dealing with what's going on with these addicts. And that's a whole nother thing. Episode 10, we had my wife on tell my sobriety story through her eyes, which was very difficult because it did not paint me in the best light, but I it was actually her idea. She wanted to be a voice for those who are suffering, and that's the spouses. And no one really is an advocate or a voice for them. So I really hope that this empowers them to listen, to maybe talk to their significant other and say, hey, why don't you just listen to this podcast, hear what other people are going through to show that you can do it yourself. So like again, this is just, it's a ray of light for those people still struggling. It's just something that we hope everyone could kind of relate to and understand the trials and tribulations of being a soldier, because a lot of us see things that humans aren't really meant to see. And alcohol is the one thing we're allowed to do to kind of match that, like
Yeah.
it's shunned. You can't do drugs while you're in or anything, and alcohol is just accepted and it's easy. You could get it anywhere, like, so it's just easy to continue down that path. So like, yeah, I want listeners to understand the struggles of veterans, to understand why this, like, addiction is so high with veterans, and to hear the journey and why we do all this to get sober, and just like the underlying joy we all have on this side of sobriety. And one thing I've said before is like, I really enjoy meeting, talking to, and getting to know addicts, because when they reach this side of sobriety, they have so much energy and a capacity to serve that most of them are doing really good things, whether it's locally, with their kids, with their community, through pocket, whatever it may be. A lot of these addicts are now like using all this extra energy where they would be searching for that high, getting that high, figuring
Yeah.
out what they would have to sell to have money for that high. Now they're using all that energy for good. And it's such a joy to see, because we all have so much to give. We all have the heart to serve, because we are military. That's what we're trained to do, is serve. So now in this capacity, it's just a joy to watch addicts who are thriving with sobriety, and just all the different ways that they're now giving back. Like it's just amazing.
Last couple of questions. How can people connect with you and find and enjoy and learn from the Sober Vet podcast?
Sure. So we're on all major platforms. All you have to do is search This Sober Vet or This Sober Vet podcast, or you could also go to our website, which is www.thissobervet.com. You can listen to all the episodes there, hear my backstory, Dr. T's backstory. We're on YouTube. We're basically anywhere you can listen to podcasts. And yeah, my challenge to everyone out there is listen to a couple episodes. If you enjoy them, leave us a review, because that way, when people search sobriety shows, the more reviews we have, the higher we get up on that list, the more people we could get to listen. And then hopefully that ripple effect of the veteran suicide going down can happen. So, and that all starts with the listeners. So, and if there's anything you could critique, let me know. Anything I could do better, just let me know. Because again, I'm here as a conduit. I'm here in service. And I just want to get the word out there and normalize sobriety with the veterans.
Well, Joe, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing so openly and candidly with us. This is an issue that's been around since the beginning of time, and I don't think it'll ever truly leave the human condition. But the way you approached it, the love from your wife, the support you got from your family, and your faith in God is now allowing you to get back in a meaningful and substantial way. And I think this is, to me, one of the best parts of podcasting is right here, is hearing this kind of story. So your story has applications in many different groups. I'm glad you're sharing it.
Thank you, Travis. Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you for letting me be on here, because now we're hitting a lot of ears that maybe didn't know we existed. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, there you have it, folks. Again, somebody, joined the military, got into a phase of their life, looked at themselves and got out of this and used a lot of what they learned in the military to do that, and now has a way to give back. And so, I just want to thank Joe for coming on and sharing with us. We'll have everything in the Oscar Mike Radio show post. And thank you so much. And as we say, we are a mission in flight. We'll see you next time.
Every generation, every sacrifice. Our nation's service members have stood up for our freedom, our families, and our future. Now it's our turn to stand up for them. This year, you can honor their service in a deeply personal way by sponsoring a $17 Veterans Wreath. Each wreath is more than a symbol. It's a heartfelt tribute to the heroes who served and to the families who carry their legacy. Visit wreathsacrossamerica.org to sponsor a wreath today. This isn't just a wreath. It's a personal gift to an American hero.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load, co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran, or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.